Hey guys, welcome to Spencer's Garage. Today we are working on my wife's 2017 Honda CR-V, and we are going to be doing a brake job. In this video, I'm just going to be doing the fronts, so if you need the rears as well, which is also going to include how to retract the electronic parking brake, I'll do that in a separate video, but this video is just going to be the fronts. So for the fronts, I am going to be using, of course, OEM parts. There is the part number. I will also put these in the description. If I can find these on Amazon, then I will have a link to that. And also some of the tools and products I will be using in this video will also be posted in the video description, so look out for that. Here are some of the tools that we are going to be working with. I will also give you the torque specs, so whenever we are assembling the new products back on and putting this all back together, I will provide torque specs. But for now, let's start on removing the old caliper. By the way, I am going to be replacing the brake pads and the rotors in this video. So I'm going to have to break all this down. And then, by the way, just as a side note, whenever I am done with this whole job, I plan to bleed the brakes at all four corners. But I will not be showing bleeding the brakes in this video. This is just going to be a removal and assembly of the brake parts themselves. So let's get started. To remove this front brake caliper, we will first need to remove these two bolts right here. These are both 14 millimeters. All right guys, I have both of the bolts out. We're just going to set those to the side, make sure you don't lose those. Now we are able to take off the caliper. Just going to wiggle it off there, and then I'm going to take my caliper hook here, and I'm just going to hook it to the spring for now, because you definitely do not want this hose, you don't want any tension put on this hose right here. You don't want it just hanging down here on the floor. So I have this nifty little hook here that I use. Okay, next we need to remove the caliper bracket. Now it is held on by a couple of 19 millimeters. One is right here, and then the other one is right here. Those will probably be on pretty tight, so just be aware of that. Here are our old brake pads. These have been, making these screeching noise, letting us know that they need to be replaced, both the front and the rears. So there they are. We could take out the pads at this time, but I think I'm going to try to leave them in, because you do want to remember the orientation of these pads and also where all these clips go. For example, this guy right here, this clip right here, you want that to be at the top back of the caliper bracket. You want that to be there. That is specific. There'll be only one pad for each side that has this on there, so you want to take note of that. So you can see this side does not have that. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to undo those 19 millimeter bolts so we can remove the caliper bracket. Okay, so here are the old pads. Remember that this part goes down here, facing this way, so we'll remember that. These pads should just come out. Also take note, these little brackets right here, this hardware is up against the caliper, so just take note of that. We're just going to push this out like that. Then I am going to put the pad down kind of in the orientation of which I removed it, just so we have further confirmation of how these pads went in. And then we can also remove this hardware right here. Probably best to get a screwdriver and just pry this off. And then next we can work on the two slide pins in the caliper bracket. Okay, here we go. I'm going to take this hardware out. Again, remember the orientation of which it was. Take those off. Now that we have the bracket nice and free here, now we can concentrate on these slide pins. Now you can just kind of pull the boot back and then just kind of move it back and forth as it comes out. And then let me get a fresh shop towel or paper towel, whatever you have. Just going to take this out. You can see it here. Now these are different. The front one and the rear one are different, so you want to pay attention. You can see this one has like a little rubber boot on it right there. The other one does not have that, so just be aware of that. So I'm just gonna clean off all that old grease. If you want to, you can kind of get the old grease out of this boot, but we're gonna leave it like that. And then what I use is a silicone lubricating compound, just like a silicone grease. This is Seal Glide. I find that this works really well. So I will just take a little bit of this. Let's see, where is that slide pen? Let's just put a little bit on the slide pen there. Just like that. And then we'll just kind of, not too much, not too little, you know, just enough. Just put it all over the slide pen like that. You could put a little bit in there in the boot. Just set that up like that, and then I'll just put just a little dab. See, just a little dab. You can just put that in there just to lubricate, get some fresh lubrication in that boot, just like that. Then we're going to take our nice and clean lubricated slide pen. We'll just stick it in there like that. And whenever you press this down, it's highly likely that some air will get trapped in there. That's okay, that's pretty normal. All you gotta do is just kind of pinch the boot and allow it to breathe a little bit right there, and then all the air will be pushed out. So you just kind of gotta work with it a little bit, and you'll eventually get that air out. All right, that looks good. Make sure that it slides in and out easily, and also you want to inspect your slide pen. You don't want any pitting, you don't want any rust, you don't want any damage on that slide pen. If it does look damaged, then you want to go ahead and replace that slide pen. But if it looks good, no abnormal wear or pitting or anything or rust on it, then you can just go ahead and lube it up again with that silicone lubricant and you'll be good to go. Looks like I have a little bit more air in this one, so I'm going to try to work this air out. But we just do the same thing for this other pin. Let's go ahead and try to take this other slide pin out. There it is. See how that one does not have that rubber boot on there? And I'm just gonna get all the old grease. See, this one has no grooves in it. It doesn't have any pitting. Nothing abnormal. Looks good. So again, we're just going to use our Seal Glide, put a little bit on there. Try to spread it evenly. And again, I will put some inside our little boot here. Just a little bit in the boot, just kind of move it around, just kind of get it lubricated, move it around in there with the fresh lubricant. And then here we have our freshly lubed up slide pen. Just put it right in there like that. Push it all the way down. Again, you'll probably have some air. I don't know if you could hear that, but some just came out. Make sure it moves in and out flawlessly. Looks good. It's not getting stuck or anything. Moving good. Okay, slide pen's done. Make sure you wipe any excess grease off of these. If you have excess grease, make sure you wipe it off because it will attract just dirt and grime, brake dust, and it'll just be a caked on mess. So try to keep these parts clean. Okay, now you need to take a wire brush and you need to clean up where the hardware sits on the caliper bracket. Just take a wire brush, just kind of agitate a little bit, make sure you get in the grooves and stuff. Just trying to make it nice and clean and a good mating surface. If you don't do this, then it could cause abnormal pad wear and you don't want that. So of course we'll do both ends. Just give it a nice good cleaning like that. And then after I am done with this brush, which it's looking pretty good right there, I'm going to spray off the bracket with some brake clean. Look at that. Looking much, much better. So like I said, do both ends. I'm going to wipe these off with a clean shop towel. This bracket will be ready to accept new hardware. Alright guys, now that we have the caliper bracket all clean, now we can pull out the new brake pads and hardware. Here are the brand new Honda OEM pads. I would highly recommend only using Honda parts. They seem to be the best in my opinion. But anyways, we have some new hardware here and then a couple of clips we need to put on the brake pads. But first, before I put on the brake pads, I'm going to put a little bit of lubricant on the parts that we had cleaned that was underneath the hardware. And I don't really like to use silicone for that part. I only like to use silicone lubricant for the slide pins. What I like to use is this ceramic extreme brake parts lubricant. I find that this works really well. So let me show you where I'm going to put that. All right, so we're just going to put a thin layer, not too much. Okay, you don't want to gob this on or anything, but we're just going to lube just the parts where the hardware makes contact. So we're just going to put that there. Of course, put it on this other side. Make sure you get in the edge or the little groove on there, like right there. We definitely don't want to miss that part. So like I said, just a very light coating. And then now we can take our hardware. Make sure you compare your old hardware to the new. I'm using Honda OEM, so I of course know that this is going to work. But let's just put it on there, and then this should just snap right on. Let's see if we can get it. There we go. And that went on perfect. I'm just gonna kind of wipe excess lubricant off. You don't want too much on there. And then let's see if this side snaps on just as good as the other side. There we go. Perfect. All right, so now in addition to the back side of this hardware, I'm also going to put a little bit of that brake parts lubricant on the inside of the hardware, and I will put just a very, very slight amount on the pads as well. I'll show you where I put that. Actually, you know what? I'm going to wait to put on the new pads until I put on the new rotor and all the other hardware. Basically, I'm going to wait to put on the bracket. I'm going to put the bracket on first and then the brake pads, because if you put the brake pads on first, they have these clips right here that act almost like a spring, and it'll be very difficult to put the caliper bracket on without those, well, falling off. So let's go ahead and move on to a different part of this job. We'll come back to this lubricating. All right, guys, before we work on retracting the piston and the caliper, let's go ahead and take off this rotor. There is a screw right here that is holding on this rotor. It's actually easiest to use I believe these are called JIS ends. They're very similar to Phillips, but they're not a Phillips. These are, in my opinion, actually much better than a Phillips. But you can also use an impact screwdriver, so it's whatever you want. See if I can get this off. Probably not, so I'm gonna hit it with just a hammer. Okay, in this case my JIS screwdriver is not working so well. You'll find that these screws are on there pretty good, so I'm actually gonna try my impact screwdriver. Let's see if I can get it off with that. Maybe if I hit it a few times it'll actually come off. Let's see. Wow guys, so that screw took me about 20 minutes to try to get that out. I have my impact screwdriver that I was hitting it with 2 different hammers here. Then I also tried this one. This one was almost going to strip it, so I stuck to the impact screwdriver, hitting it with the hammer, and that finally got it out. But I think what really helped is, first I tried this PB Blaster penetrating oil just around here, and also if you look on the other side of the rotor, you can see the end threads to this. So I just sprayed a little bit of this. That didn't work. So then finally I got out my krill penetrant. This stuff is really good. It's a lot more expensive than this PB Blaster, but this worked. If you guys haven't heard of this, I would highly suggest that as using it as your penetrating oil. Anyways, I sprayed a little bit behind it on the other side of the rotor here. Can't really, it's hard to see, but I sprayed it on there, and finally, oh, and also I don't have a torch, but I did heat it up with a lighter. You can see it's a little black right there, but that finally worked. I finally got this screw out, man. And I have, of course, done many brake jobs before, and that's not completely stripped, but it was definitely on its way. So I, of course, plan ahead, and here is the part number. Okay, so there's the part number for these new rotor screws. So anyways, I'll have that also in the description. So now we can finally take off this rotor. Sometimes you have to hit these with a hammer just to bust them loose. And if that doesn't work for you, you can always screw in a couple of bolts in here and kind of push the rotor away from the hub here. I'm just going to try to give it a few whacks and see if we can just kind of bust it loose here. There we go. There we go. Before we put on the new rotor, I am going to compress that caliper right there, but also you want to get all of this surface rust off. You don't want any raised rust on this hub right here. So you're going to want to get yourself another wire brush and thoroughly take off all of this surface rust and make sure the surface is clean. You're going to want to do near the hub right here, and then also around the wheel studs. Just make sure you get this whole surface nice and flush and rust free as you can get it. So I'm going to spend some time and clean this up. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I got all of the surface stuff off. Now next I'm going to go ahead and use my brake clean and clean off all the residue and kind of all the rust particles off of that. By the way, this is the brush I ended up using. This one is a lot more, well, it's just larger and it's a little bit more abrasive than that brass one. So this one worked really good. And then let's go ahead and spray some brake clean. Just get off all the particles. Make sure it's nice and clean. That's good. Okay, that's looking a lot better. So next, after that dries off, and I'll probably give it a quick wipe down, but anyways, after we get that all dry, this is what I'm going to use to put behind it. This is Anti-Seize high temp copper formula. You don't really want to use the one in the gray bottle, the Anti-Seize in the gray bottle, because that is not high temp. That's not good because obviously brakes get very high temperatures. So I would not recommend using that Anti-Seize. So anyways, I'm just gonna give this a quick wipe down, and then we can lather on our high temp Anti-Seize on the back of this. And that is, you know, to make sure that the rotor, the new rotor we put on here, doesn't get stuck. Also, you definitely want to use the wire brush. That's not an optional thing, because you don't want any raised areas on this hub here, because that could affect braking and it could cause the pads to not wear evenly, and it may even cause like a shimmy in your steering wheel or something, or in your brake pedal, I mean, whenever you brake. So it's very important. Look at all that. So yeah, definitely clean that up with a brush and wipe it down. It's looking good. Now let's put on our high temp Anti-Seize. All right guys, now let's concentrate on the caliper itself. You can see the caliper piston right here. I already sprayed just a very, very light coat of brake clean, and you can see how dirty my rag is right here. I went ahead and I cleaned all of that brake dust, all that grime, all the way around the piston, because you see how clean it is right there? Because if you don't clean that off, that is going to go inside this seal, and it's not going to create a good seal, and it actually could possibly contaminate your brake fluid, and it just may wear out parts a lot faster than they need to be. So just make sure you clean this piston really well with some brake clean before you start doing this. And now what we're going to do is we're going to push that piston back in. Where you see how it's sticking out a little bit, we're going to push it back into the caliper. So there are various tools that you can use to make this job happen, but I'll show you how I use my tool. Okay, like I said, there are different tools you could use for this job, but this is the one I have, so this is what I'm going to use. This just compresses something. Like I have one of the old brake pads pressing or up against the caliper, and you want this to press evenly. So all I have to do is just turn this knob, and it is going to push that cylinder back into the caliper. So I'm going to use two hands, and I'm going to turn this and get that all the way in. Okay guys, side note, whenever you are pushing that piston back in, brake fluid is going to come back into the master cylinder reservoir right here. So you either want to make sure that you this is not completely full. You may have to get like a turkey baster or syringe or something and pull some fluid out of this. Or option two is you could undo the bleeder valve on the caliper, which is right here, hook up a hose to it and just have it bleed into a bottle. I'm just going to watch the master cylinder, and whenever I do the other side, I will probably actually just I have a syringe that I use. I'll probably just, a clean syringe, probably just put a syringe in here and suck out some of the brake fluid out of this so it doesn't overfill. You definitely don't want this overfilling. And by the way, as I said in the beginning of the video, I plan to bleed the brakes, so I'm going to be putting brand new brake fluid in this anyways. Okay, now that the caliper is nice and retracted, now that the piston is retracted and the hub is coated with the high temp anti-seize, now it is time to open our genuine Honda parts. So let's go ahead and open this brand new rotor. Did I mention Honda OEM parts are the best? Well, they are. It's like Christmas, isn't it? Alright, so now I'm going to spray the rotor down with some brake clean, both the front and the back. And the reason I'm doing this is because these rotors are shipped with some sort of like oil on them. And you definitely do not want that on your new brake pads. So, and the oil is there so that they don't rust, you know, before they are installed. So just spray it down really good with some brake clean, give it a good wipe, you should be good. All right, perfect. Looking good, nice and brand new. All right, now whenever you install this new rotor, you want to make sure of this guy right here. That is where that screw goes. And you want to make sure that that lines up with that hole right there on the hub. So just make sure you do that. Let's go ahead and see if we can get this new one on. Let's see, so it needs to go like that. Yep, just like that. Looks great. Now let's go in our little pack right here. Since this one was pounded on for 20 minutes. Eventually came loose, but I always order these whenever I do a brake job because you never know how damaged, how hard, how easy it is going to be with these screws. Look at that, before and after. So I would highly suggest, especially if you live in like a rusted area. I mean, you may get lucky with these coming out with a couple of hits of a hammer, but or an impact, you know, but I live in Texas and I wasn't even that lucky, so good luck with that. Although this is a 2017 and this is the very first brake job that this car has ever had, so that's another reason for me to go with Honda brakes. These have lasted so long. All right guys, we are ready to finish off this bracket. Now you can see I already have the hardware in there, but we're going to use a little bit more lubricant on this hardware right here. So I'm just going to very lightly, a light coat on the hardware right here. Make sure you get in the corners, just kind of very lightly. See, I missed it. I guess you need to come at it from all angles, huh? See how I missed that corner? Gotta look at it from all angles. Right there. Now let's do the other side. Again, I am using my Ceramic Extreme Brake Parts lubricant. Really good stuff. These are obviously the Honda OEM pads, and they come with these pieces of hardware right here, but these two, I guess in the packaging, they were off for, you know, space reasons to actually fit in the package. But you can see there is a little area for this part of the hardware right there to snap on. You can see this one's already on, so we already know the orientation. So I'm just going to put it on. It should just kind of snap on just like that. Perfect. See, goes on like that and that. And then this one, this one has the wear indicator right there. So we know the location of this one, and this one is missing one right here. So again, we will get our little hardware piece. Again, this one has that little area. I'm just going to put it on just like, yeah. And there it is. Now, I also, in addition to putting a little bit of brake parts lubricant on the hardware on the caliper, I also like to put it on what I call the ears of the brake pads. So just going to put a very light coat just to get them a little bit lubricated on the ears right there. I like to go all the way around. Any part that touches the hardware, really, you want the lubricant. So just going to put them on there, both sides, of course. Okay, now that those are lubricated, we can set this one down. Oops, sorry. I'm going to put it right there on the towel. Again, same thing. Put a little bit of lubricant on these ears, and then I'm not going to put the brake pads on just yet, because these brake pads with those hardware sticking out, it kind of acts like springs and it wants to spring out, so they'll come off. So I'm not going to mount the brake pads just yet, but what we can do is we can mount the brake bracket first, the caliper bracket. So this one is all nice and lubed up, and slide pins, everything is ready to go. If you had any rust or old thread locker or anything like that on these bolts that are going to hold the brake caliper bracket on, then I would highly suggest getting a metal brush and just going over these really good to get all that corrosion or old thread locker off before you install these bolts. Always start these by hand. I would not start these by an impact or anything like that. All right guys, these 19mm bolts get torqued down to 101 foot-pounds. 101 foot-pounds. All right guys, so now we are ready to put the brake pad into the brake bracket. The best way to go about this is kind of have it at an angle at the bottom. You see how I have that? And then just press it in. There we go. Now these hardwares right here, these will act like springs. So you see how that's kind of like a springing action? That's normal. Also, remember our wear indicator. It is in this back corner of the whole caliper assembly. So just make sure that all that is in the right spot. And that went in without a hitch. Now we can do the front one here. Again, we are going to go at it kind of at an angle like that. And then just press it forward. Just like that. Perfect. Now, I am actually going to put just a little bit of lubricant on the back of these pads. But you know what I like to do instead of even putting them on the pads? Well, on this front one, I'll actually clean this part of the caliper. I'll clean this part of the caliper because this is what touches it. And I'll just clean this, and then I'm put a little bit of this lubricant on this side of the brake caliper. And then on the back side, just a very, very thin coat of lubricant, because this is where the piston is going to touch. So I'm just going to put just a very, very light coat of brake lubricant on the back of this. Okay, now I'm going to take this off of the caliper, just like that. And now we are going to have to press in our new brake pads a little bit in order to fit the caliper back on. So you may have to wiggle it a little bit on there. Oh, and then be sure to press the slide pin bolts in all the way so you can get past them. There we go. All right, very good. It looked like this car didn't have any Loctite on these, so I'm not going to put any on there. So as soon as you get these bolts hand tight, you will torque them to spec. All right, these caliper bolts, these get torqued down to 37 foot-pounds. All right, that concludes how to do the front brakes on a 2017 and 2022 Honda CR-V. I used all OEM parts. If you want any of the products that I used in today's video, I'll link as much as I can in the description to Amazon links. By the way, don't forget, after this, it's a very good idea that you want to bleed your brakes. So just be aware of how full your master cylinder is here. To do the next one, the driver's side, I am going to have to take out some fluid with a syringe. So I will do that. And after I'm done with all four, I will bleed the entire brake system. But anyways, I hope this video helped you guys out in any way. If it did, please give me a thumbs up and look out for the other video of the rear brakes on this car. Thanks for watching, guys.